Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He returned to Arizona expecting dust and memories. What he found was a mansion built on stolen land. His land. A forged signature. A vanished house. A battle against a queen of the HOA. One man, one fraud, and a plan to take it all back. This isn't revenge. It's justice. I hadn't been back to Arizona in almost 4 years. Not really. Sure, I flew down for a weekend once to check on the property after a storm rolled through, but I didn't even get out of the car. Drove by, saw the old house still standing, weathered but upright, and flew back to Seattle the next morning. Life had been too busy. Remote tech work, startups, deadlines, and honestly, I hadn't been ready to deal with the place emotionally. It was my grandmother's house, tiny, creaky, with green paint flaking off like old lizard skin in the desert sun. The AC hadn't worked since the Bush administration, and half the porch had been claimed by termites. But it was hers, and then it became mine. After she passed, I inherited the property, a full quarter-acre lot just outside Phoenix city limits. I kept up with the taxes, kept the deed in a fireproof folder, and told myself I'd renovate it someday. Someday had finally come. My company made full remote status permanent. No more office, no more excuses. I packed my life into a rental truck, tossed my desk in the back like a trophy, and drove southeast with the AC blasting and Spotify playing a playlist I called Desert Comeback. The moment I crossed into Arizona, my allergies kicked in like they were mad I'd ever left. The air smelled like sunburnt sage and gasoline. I took the final exit off the freeway, winding through quiet HOA-infested streets that all looked like they'd been copied and pasted from a suburban real estate brochure. Beige, beige, and oh look, more beige. I didn't need GPS to know where I was going, but I turned it on anyway. Nostalgia and paranoia in equal measure. As I drove up Cypress Lane, my stomach twisted. The oak tree on the corner was gone. So was the rusty old sign for the swap meet that used to hang from a cracked telephone pole. The neighborhood looked richer. Gated fences, polished sidewalks, decorative rocks aligned with military precision. It wasn't like this before. Not even close. I slowed the truck to a crawl as the navigation chirped. Arrived at destination. I blinked. This wasn't my grandmother's house. This was someone else's goddamn mansion. A big, shiny, smug-looking 2-story Mediterranean-style cottage with stone veneer, elegant black windows, and a wide tiled roof that looked like it belonged in a magazine titled Real Estate Porn for the entitled. The front yard was immaculate. There was a custom-forged iron fence wrapping around the lot. I could see the shimmer of a pool behind it and, no, I wasn't hallucinating, a brass plaque on the gate. Private property, the Dawson family estate. I parked. Hard. Slammed the brake like I was about to chase a coyote off my hood. The street was empty, silent. No kids on bikes, no dogs barking. Just this imposter house sitting where mine was supposed to be, pretending it belonged there. I checked the GPS again. Same address, same damn numbers. Double-checked the folder on my passenger seat. Deed, tax records, everything registered under my name. This was the place. Or it had been. I stepped out of the truck slowly, like I was approaching a crime scene, which, let's be honest, I probably was. The sun was brutal. My boots crunched over gravel that hadn't been there before. I walked up to the gate, peering through the bars like a tourist in a high-security zoo. I recognized nothing, not a single detail. Even the ground was different, flattened, landscaped, artificial. The porch swing my grandmother used to sit on while swatting flies and sipping sweet tea was gone. The creaky screen door erased, and replaced by this. Then I heard her. "Can I help you?" Her voice came from the front porch, where she stood holding a glass of something cold, wearing tennis whites and a wide-brimmed hat that probably cost more than my laptop. She had the smile of someone who'd never had to apologize for anything in her life. Her hair was blonde, too perfect. Her whole presence screamed, "I am the HOA." I squared my shoulders. "Yeah, I think there's been a mistake. This is my property." She didn't laugh, not at first. She smirked, like I'd just told her the sky was green and that I'd built this house myself out of discarded optimism. "I'm sorry, young man. I don't know what fantasy you're living in, but this lot was purchased legally 3 years ago at a tax auction. You're trespassing." "No," I said calmly, holding up my folder like it was a holy relic. "I inherited this property 5 years ago. I've been paying the taxes on it ever since. She tilted her head. Clearly not. It wouldn't have gone to auction otherwise. It didn't, I snapped. I've got the records right here. Well, she said with a practiced sigh, I don't know what scam you're trying to pull, but this land belongs to the Dawson family. I suggest you take your lies and leave before I call the police. I am the Dawson family's problem, I muttered under my breath. What did you say? Call them, I said louder. Hell, go ahead. I'll be right here with my paperwork when they show up. Her smile froze. You're making a scene. No, I'm uncovering one. She turned on her heel and stormed back inside without another word. The heavy wooden door slammed behind her with the kind of finality usually reserved for courtroom verdicts. I stood there alone on the sidewalk, sweat trickling down my neck, staring through the iron bars at a house I didn't recognize on land I legally owned. Somewhere between disbelief and rage, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because this was going to be one hell of a fight, and I don't lose what's mine. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the truck. Not in the cheap motel I ended up booking 10 minutes away. Not even during the strange half-dream state where your body gives up, but your brain keeps replaying the same scene on a loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the iron fence, the plaque with someone else's name on it, and that woman's smile. Tight, confident, unbothered. The kind of smile people wear when they think the system is on their side. By 8 the next morning, I was parked outside the Maricopa County Treasurer's office with a coffee that tasted like burnt regret. Beige building, American flag out front, security guard leaning against the wall, scrolling his phone. It looked harmless, boring, which somehow made it worse. Places like this don't scream when they take things from you. They just stamp forms and move on. Inside, the air conditioning was aggressive, the kind that makes you question whether Arizona secretly hates humans. I took a number and sat between an elderly man arguing with a pamphlet and a woman loudly explaining to no one that her cousin knew someone in zoning. When my number was finally called, I stepped up to the counter and slid my folder under the glass. I need the tax history for this property, I said, keeping my voice neutral. There's been some kind of mistake. The clerk, a woman in her late 40s with tired eyes and a practiced expression of polite detachment, typed for a long moment. Her fingers slowed, then stopped. She frowned. Well, she said carefully, this parcel was sold at a tax lien auction a little over 3 years ago. I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly. No, it wasn't. She looked up at me. Sir, according to our records, there was a delinquency of 3 consecutive years. The lien was foreclosed and the property was sold. That's impossible, I said. I paid every year, on time. I have the receipts. I opened the folder and laid them out one by one. Bank statements, confirmation emails, everything neat, boring, undeniable. She studied them longer this time, her lips pressed together. These payments were received, she admitted, but they were applied to a different parcel. I felt my stomach drop. Different how? She turned the monitor slightly so I could see. 2 parcel numbers, almost identical. 1 digit off. Your payments were credited to this neighboring property, she said, owned by a Cheryl Dawson. The name hit me like a punch I hadn't seen coming. You're telling me, I said slowly, that for 3 years I paid taxes on someone else's land and nobody noticed. She shrugged, the bureaucratic kind. It happens. No, I snapped. It doesn't just happen. Notices get sent. Letters. Warnings. Yes, she said, scrolling again. Those were mailed. To where? I asked. She read the address aloud. It wasn't mine. 1 digit wrong. Just enough to send every warning, every red flag, into the void. I never got anything, I said. Not 1 letter, not 1 call. I understand your frustration, she replied, which is government speak, for I am emotionally unavailable. If you believe the auction was conducted in error, you'll need to pursue legal action. So she bought my land for how much? I asked. She hesitated. $8,000. I actually laughed this time. A full, humorless bark. My grandmother's lot, quarter-acre, clean title, prime location, was worth at least $120,000, even before the housing market lost its mind. $8,000. I left the building in a haze, sunlight punching me square in the face. I sat in my truck and just stared at the steering wheel for a full minute, breathing slow, counting, trying not to do something stupid like drive through an iron fence. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't careless. I wasn't irresponsible. Someone had moved my money. That realization flipped a switch. This wasn't about negligence anymore. This was about intent. I made a few calls from the parking lot. First, my bank. Confirmed payments, timestamps, destinations. Then an attorney referral service. Within an hour, I was sitting across from Martha Eaton in a small office that smelled like black coffee and litigation. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense, with the posture of someone who had spent decades dealing with people who thought rules were optional. She flipped through my documents without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair. "This isn't a clerical error," she said. "This is either gross incompetence or fraud. And the buyer just happens to be my neighbor," I replied. "Who happens to run the HOA?" Martha's eyebrow lifted slightly. "That's convenient." I told her everything: the house, the fence, the plaque, the smile. When I finished, she nodded once. "All right," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. We start pulling records, every address change, every internal note, every employee who touched this file. If someone rerouted your payments, they left fingerprints." "What about the house?" I asked. "She built it on my land." Martha's mouth twitched. "Let's focus on proving ownership first. One fight at a time." I left her office with a plan, a retainer agreement, and a strange mix of rage and relief. For the first time since I pulled up to that gate, I wasn't alone in this. That afternoon, I drove back past the property. Didn't stop. Just slowed enough to see the pool glinting behind the fence, the curtains drawn, the place standing there like it had every right to exist. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles hurt. Whatever game Cheryl Dawson thought she'd won, she'd started it on paper. And paper cuts deep when you know where to slice. Martha didn't waste time. 2 days after our first meeting, I was back in her office, and she already had a small mountain of printouts waiting for me. Parcel logs, payment trails, archived change of address requests, pages and pages of quiet little breadcrumbs left behind by someone who thought nobody would ever follow them. She handed me a highlighter and pointed to one line. "Recognize this name?" she asked. "Kevin Morgan," I read aloud. "Yep, county records technician, handled both the address correction and the lien processing on your parcel." The forms were signed, time-stamped, and authorized under his employee ID. I scanned the document again. The form authorizing the change of mailing address on my property was right there, bold as brass. Different street, one number off. And someone had signed for it, with my name, in handwriting that looked like it had been done by someone trying to mimic bad penmanship on purpose. "I've never submitted this," I said, heat rising in my face. "I know," Martha replied. "Well, we're going to prove that." She tapped another document. "And here's where it gets interesting. Kevin Morgan left the county assessor's office about a year ago. Know where he works now?" I shook my head. She slid over a printout of a staff listing for the Sunset Valley Homeowners Association. There he was, Kevin Morgan, Community Operations Manager. And guess who's listed as president? I didn't even need to look. Cheryl Dawson. Bingo! For a second, the room got very, very quiet. The only sound was the hum of the outdated ceiling fan, clicking like a bad metronome over my shoulder. Martha leaned back in her chair. "This isn't a mistake, Nate. It's a racket. You were targeted. There's something about hearing your paranoia confirmed by a lawyer that makes it feel both better and worse. Better because you're not crazy. Worse because it means someone actually orchestrated this." I spent the next several hours with Martha tracing the timeline. Turns out, right around the time I made my first tax payment after inheriting the property, Kevin Morgan accidentally rerouted the funds. Every year, I paid faithfully. Every year, the payments were logged, not to my parcel, but to Cheryl's adjacent one. "This woman got you to pay her taxes," Martha said, almost impressed. "And then use the delinquency to buy your land for pennies." I stared at the maps, the payment logs, the change of address forms, trying to wrap my head around the sheer level of gall it took to pull something like this off. She didn't just exploit a system glitch, she engineered it. "She must have known I didn't live locally," I said. "I hadn't updated anything since I inherited the place." "Exactly," Martha nodded. "You were out of state, off the radar, the perfect target." My palms itched. "You think Kevin got a cut?" I asked. "Oh, I don't think he did this for free," she said. "But we're not there yet. First, we get the documents formally authenticated. Then we look for patterns, other parcels, other owners. If they've done this once, they've probably done it again." A week later, we got our first break. Martha's paralegal, Jasmine, young, sharp, the kind of person who probably alphabetized her Spotify playlist, found a notarized letter in the county records, supposedly from me, requesting address correction, dated 5 years ago. Only problem: the notary who stamped it had her license revoked 3 years earlier for falsifying identities. Well, shit, I muttered, flipping the paper over. Oh yeah, Martha said with a grim smile. We're officially in criminal territory now. I asked her how strong the case was legally. Pretty damn solid, she said, but they're going to deny everything. Cheryl will play dumb, and Kevin's probably been coached. We need something more than just paper. Later that night, I drove through Sunset Valley again. I kept my car moving, slow and steady, like a delivery van or a lost rideshare driver. I wasn't there to confront anyone. I just needed to see it again, with new eyes. That fake estate, the fence, the pool, the patio lights that looked like something out of a luxury hotel, and the people inside. Cheryl holding court on her perfect porch like a queen surveying a stolen kingdom. Kevin standing by the garage, chatting with another man in a Sunset Valley security polo. I snapped a few pictures from the street. License plates, faces, routine surveillance. Felt like something out of a crime documentary, except I was the guy holding the phone with rage pumping through every vein in my body. The next morning, Cheryl filed a restraining order. My phone buzzed with the alert from the court notice before I even poured my coffee. Apparently, she was now in fear for her safety because I had appeared uninvited near her home with a camera engaging in suspicious activity. I called Martha immediately. She's trying to flip the narrative, she said. Standard tactic. Paint you as unstable to discredit your claims. She's building a wall of bullshit, I said. Then we bring a wrecking ball, Martha replied. Let's get to work. By the end of the week, we had officially filed a preliminary civil complaint challenging the legality of the tax auction, the fraudulent paperwork, and the ownership transfer. It was step one in what Martha promised would be a war of attrition, but Cheryl had just thrown the first punch, and I was starting to wonder how many more she had lined up. The restraining order was just the appetizer. 2 days after I was served, I got a visit from a sheriff's deputy at the motel. He was polite, almost apologetic, but firm. Handed me a paper and told me to stay at least 100 feet away from Cheryl Dawson, her residence, her property line, and, get this, any associated facilities under the HOA. What does that even mean? I asked, scanning the document. Associated facilities? Clubhouse, community pool, dog park, stuff like that, he said. It's boilerplate. I don't even have a dog, I muttered. He gave me a look that said, I just deliver the bullshit. I don't manufacture it. I thanked him anyway. It wasn't his fault I'd walked into a suburban shark pit where fences were sharp and smiles sharper. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing. First, a text from an old high school friend who somehow now lived in the area. Then a LinkedIn message from a former coworker. Then a completely random DM from someone named Tammy who claimed to be a concerned mother in the neighborhood. Each one had the same tone, confused, vaguely accusatory, and just nosy enough to feel off. Hey Nate, just saw some stuff online about you. Everything okay? What's this I'm hearing about you threatening a local woman? Are you really trying to sue a widow for her home? I didn't know what Cheryl was spreading, but she was moving fast and dirty. It didn't take long to find the Facebook group. Sunset Valley Strong. Header image, kids holding flags, a golden retriever in sunglasses, and the HOA logo glowing like the seal of a private republic. Pinned to the top was a post from Cheryl herself, full of passive-aggressive concern, faux gratitude, and weaponized innocence. I hate to bring negativity to this beautiful space, but as many of you know, a man from out of state has been harassing me and challenging the legal ownership of my home. He has made repeated unwanted visits and was seen lurking outside our community with a camera. I trust in the legal process, and I know truth will prevail, but please be alert. He may try to contact others here as well. Beneath that, the comments poured in like bile. Disgusting. These people think they can just take whatever they want. Typical entitled outsider. Bet he's from California. Praying for you, Cheryl. You've done so much for this neighborhood. I almost threw my phone across the room. She was building a wall of perception, cementing the idea that I was a predator, not a victim. And the worst part, it was working. People wanted a villain, and she was handing them one wrapped in legalese and neighborly concern. Martha wasn't surprised. She's preempting your case, she said. If she controls the narrative, it'll be harder to get people to talk, harder to find sympathy. What about the legal side? I asked. Can this mess with the case? She hesitated. Not directly, but perception matters. Judges read news. Juries Google. And Cheryl wasn't done. The next day, I got a knock on the motel room door again. This time, a process server with a civil harassment claim stapled to a thick folder. Allegations of emotional distress, reputational damage, and, my personal favorite, a pattern of threatening behavior. This is theater, Martha said, flipping through the packet. They want to bury you in noise. Well, it's working, I said. I'm drowning in it. We decided to file a countermotion. Martha was good, but even she admitted that the tempo Cheryl had set was unusually aggressive. She's got legal resources, she said. Either she's very rich, very scared, or both. I took a walk that evening, away from Sunset Valley, away from the motel, away from everything. I ended up at an empty park bench near a dried-out community lake where ducks used to waddle through mosquito swarms and kids threw pebbles. Now it looked as tired as I felt. I sat there a long time, just thinking about my grandma, about how much she loved that little house, about how she'd walk to the corner store every morning and talk to people by name, how she always said, good land doesn't just feed your feet, it anchors your bones, and how some conniving sociopath turned that land into a status symbol with a security code. I wasn't just dealing with a thief. I was dealing with a manipulator who had built her entire identity around dominance in a community that worshipped conformity. She was the queen of a tiny kingdom, and I was the stranger at the gates with a torch and a legal pad. Then the last piece clicked into place. I remembered something odd from Martha's printouts, the tax payments that got misapplied. They didn't just vanish into bureaucracy. They were credited to Cheryl's own parcel. My money had been paying her taxes. That wasn't just opportunistic. That was orchestration. I called Martha right then and there. We need to dig into the payment routing, like deep. Already on it, she said. Also, I got a call from a PI we sometimes work with. He says someone else is asking questions about you. Let me guess, I said. A certain HOA president? Close. She hired a private investigator, wants dirt on you. Credit history, employment records, even old landlords. Perfect, I muttered. This is turning into chess with a lunatic. Martha chuckled grimly. Then let's be the better lunatic. By the end of the week, we'd gathered enough circumstantial patterns to begin preparing a more aggressive motion, but we still lacked one key thing: direct evidence, a recording, a witness, something that pierced the veil of legality Cheryl had wrapped herself in. That night, my phone rang. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Mr. Coleman? The woman's voice was cautious but clear. My name is Rita Morgan. I think I have something you need to hear about my ex-husband. Her voice shook just a little when she said her name. Rita Morgan, ex-wife of Kevin Morgan. The same Kevin who rerouted my tax payments, forged my signature, and somehow landed a soft gig under Cheryl Dawson's HOA umbrella. I didn't speak right away. I'm sorry to bother you, she said quickly, but I heard what's going on, and I think I can help. Why? I asked. Why now? Because I'm tired of protecting people who don't deserve it, she said. And Kevin bragged about what he did. He thought it made him clever. That part I believed immediately. I pictured Kevin as the kind of smug bureaucrat who thought backroom deals and legal loopholes were a form of creative expression, the kind of guy who'd ruin someone's life and then toast himself for his ingenuity. I have proof, Rita added. Phone recordings, messages, even one video. I sat straight up in my motel bed. Where did you get all that? I asked. I recorded him. He never knew. We were already falling apart by then. He'd come home drunk and talk about Cheryl, about how he helped her outsmart the system, said they'd hacked real estate, like it was a game. My jaw clenched. Is he still in contact with her? From what I can tell, yeah. They're more than just colleagues, if you get what I mean. I didn't want to deal with it at the time. I just wanted the divorce finalized. She paused. I should have come forward earlier, but I was scared of retaliation. Kevin still has connections. Cheryl has power in that community. I wasn't ready. But now, seeing your story pop up online, something snapped. You don't deserve what they did to you. I took a slow breath. Where can we meet? We agreed on neutral ground, a diner off Interstate 17, halfway between my motel and whatever anonymity Rita was trying to preserve. She arrived 15 minutes late, looking exhausted but steady. Shoulder-length brown hair, jeans, a simple blouse, and eyes that had clearly seen too much. She didn't order food, just coffee. When she pulled the flash drive out of her purse, she placed it on the table like it was something radioactive. "It's all on there," she said. "I backed it up to 2 places, but this copy's for you." "You sure you want to be part of this?" I asked. "Too late now," she said with a tight smile. "Besides, maybe this helps me sleep better." Back in Martha's office, we plugged it in. The first audio file started with Kevin laughing. "She's not gonna fight it. He's some tech guy from Seattle, probably forgot he even owned the place." Pause. Ice clinks in a glass. His voice again. "Cheryl gave me 15 grand to make it disappear. Little paperwork shuffle, address tweak, slide his payments over to her parcel. Boom. We win the tax auction by default. Clean as a whistle." Martha hit pause and exhaled through her teeth. "Oh, this is gold." There were more recordings, one where Kevin bragged about using old notary seals to push through address change forms, another where he explained how he knew no one would check because the county's too damn lazy. We even found a short video taken by Rita where Kevin was pacing their old kitchen, half drunk, ranting about how these idiots don't even read the notices, they just pay and assume it works. "This is beyond civil fraud," Martha muttered. "This is felony territory." "Federal?" "Oh, absolutely." We arranged a meeting with the Phoenix field office of the FBI. Property fraud involving forged documents, abuse of public office, and mail fraud. That checked enough boxes to land on their radar. Agent Gutierrez met us 2 days later in a quiet government building that smelled like paper and paranoia. He listened, barely interrupting, while Martha laid out the story like a legal kill shot. Then we played the recordings. He didn't blink until Kevin mentioned the $15,000. Then he wrote something down. "Is this the only parcel you're aware of?" he asked. "Far as we know," I said. "But if they pulled this off once, they might have done it to others," Gutierrez finished. "Exactly." He nodded. "Leave everything with us. We'll review. If this checks out, it won't stay a local matter." By the time we walked out, the Arizona sun felt slightly less suffocating. Still, I knew Cheryl wasn't going to sit quietly. If she caught wind that the feds were now in play, she'd either vanish or double down. That night, I parked across from her house again, not to confront, not to violate the restraining order, just to look. Her lights were on. Pool glowing in the backyard, Kevin's car in the driveway. They had no idea a wrecking ball was already in motion. I expected the FBI to take weeks, maybe months. Government wheels tend to turn at the speed of a DMV line. But it turns out when you show up with audio of a guy admitting to forging documents and accepting a bribe for property fraud, things move faster. 3 days later, Agent Gutierrez called. "We're greenlighting a controlled operation," he said, voice crisp. "We want to confirm direct coordination between Dawson and Morgan, ideally with her acknowledging the bribery or admitting knowledge of the fraud." "Sounds dangerous," I said. "She doesn't have to know it's happening," he replied. "That's where the ex-wife comes in." Rita didn't hesitate when we told her the plan. "She's going to lose it," she said, voice calm. "But I don't care. Kevin owes me more than just a broken marriage." Gutierrez explained the setup. Rita would call Kevin and say she'd found the recordings and wanted hush money. Not a threat, not blackmail, just enough pressure to make him panic. The real goal was to catch Kevin relaying that panic to Cheryl. We ran through scenarios. Rita practiced her lines. Gutierrez brought in a small team with equipment that looked straight out of a low-budget spy film. Wires, recorders, surveillance vans. The call went live the next morning. We sat in a van 2 blocks away from Cheryl's estate. I had a headset on, listening in. Rita's voice came through first, calm, calculated. "Kevin, we need to talk." "Jesus, Rita, what now?" "I found those old files, the ones from the kitchen. You remember, don't you?" Silence. Then Kevin again. What files?" "The recordings. You bragging about Cheryl, about the payments, about the tax switcheroo. I backed them up, multiple places." He swore under his breath. "Look, Rita, don't do anything stupid." "I'm not. I just want compensation. For everything. You want me to shut up? Pay me. 10 grand. By Friday." Another pause. Then the magic words. "Shit. I have to talk to Cheryl. She'll know what to do." We didn't even flinch. Gutierrez just made a small checkmark on his notepad. The second call came less than 15 minutes later. Rita had left her line open. Kevin didn't know. He was calling Cheryl on speaker. We heard the whole thing. Rita found the recordings. "What recordings?" Cheryl snapped. "Me, talking about the auction, the payments, us, everything." She went silent. Then, "How bad?" "Pretty bad." A long pause. Then Cheryl said the line that sealed her fate. "Pay her. Whatever she wants. If this gets out, we're both screwed. I told you to burn that crap." Gutierrez closed his eyes for a second, like he was savoring the flavor of justice. Then he turned to the agent beside him. "We got it. Full admission. Get it transcribed and reviewed by legal." The next 48 hours blurred into prep. Warrant applications, case packaging, coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Turns out Cheryl Dawson was already on a soft watch list. This wasn't her first questionable real estate maneuver. She'd been involved in 2 other tax lien acquisitions that smelled a little funny. No charges stuck. Until now. That evening, I stood outside the gate of her estate again. This time, I wasn't alone. Black SUVs lined the street like storm clouds. One by one, agents approached the property. Quiet, focused, no drama. When Cheryl opened the door in her silk robe, she probably thought someone was delivering wine. Instead, she got a badge and a pair of cuffs. Kevin was picked up at the HOA office. He didn't say a word, just kept looking around like someone would jump out and yell, "Just kidding!" But no one did. From my spot behind the line, I watched as neighbors started to gather. Phones out, whispers. Some pretended not to notice. Others openly filmed, the perfect HOA queen being walked out in handcuffs in front of her empire. I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated, like the ground was real under my feet again. Later, Agent Gutierrez handed me a copy of the transcript. Not for evidence, just for me. "You held your ground," he said. "That matters." I nodded, still processing. "What happens now?" He gave me a knowing look. "Now, we take it to court." Court feels nothing like TV. No dramatic music. No sudden gasps from the gallery. Just stiff suits, flickering fluorescents, and a judge who looks like he's allergic to adjectives. Still, when Cheryl Dawson stepped into that courtroom in a beige prison-issue jumpsuit, her hair tied back, no makeup, no sunglasses, the silence carried its own kind of drama. She didn't look at me. Not once. Kevin sat 2 rows behind her, visibly sweating, tapping his foot like he was waiting for a bomb to go off under his seat. He looked smaller without his HOA clipboard and smug confidence. Like a man finally realizing the machine he helped build was grinding him down now. The prosecution was led by a no-nonsense assistant U.S. attorney named Claire Fields. She opened with the facts: fraudulent real estate acquisition, forged documents, misuse of public authority, and interstate mail fraud. But the real damage came from the evidence: Rita's recordings, Kevin's drunken monologues, Cheryl's "pay her whatever she wants" line, the forged notary stamp from a woman whose license had expired years ago. All of it came out, and each time it did, Cheryl shrank a little deeper into her chair. Then came the kicker: Cheryl's other schemes. Turns out she hadn't just done this to me. The FBI found 2 more properties acquired the same way, both originally owned by elderly residents who'd passed away without immediate heirs. Cheryl had timed the notices to expire during probate delays. One of the families had assumed the property was still pending inheritance when Cheryl swooped in and bought it for $12,000. Martha whispered beside me. She wasn't just lucky. She was running a system. Then came the HOA fund records. Subpoenaed bank statements showed that Cheryl had misallocated over $180,000 of HOA reserve funds, funneling them through bogus maintenance contracts to companies owned by, you guessed it, her ex-husband, who conveniently operated under an LLC that didn't even have a website. I watched the jury's expressions go from skeptical to outraged. Martha didn't even need to speak much. The case was ironclad. All we had to do was sit there and let Cheryl's world unravel one transaction at a time. Kevin tried to make a deal. He flipped mid-trial, agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony was the final nail. He admitted to orchestrating the address switch, rerouting my tax payments to Cheryl's parcel, and pocketing $15,000 in consulting fees. When asked by the judge why he did it, Kevin shrugged and muttered, "It was easy." I could see jurors shifting uncomfortably. They weren't just hearing about fraud, they were hearing how little it took to break the system. After closing arguments, the jury only needed 5 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts for Cheryl Dawson, 3 counts of mail fraud, 2 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of HOA funds. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in federal prison plus restitution. Kevin got 4 years and was permanently barred from working with any public or municipal office. Cheryl's ex-husband, whose divorce appeared more strategic than sincere, got 3 years for money laundering and contract fraud. Prosecutors uncovered years of phony invoices submitted to the HOA for work that never happened, all approved by Cheryl. I sat in the back of the courtroom when the sentencing was read. My palms were sweaty, not from nerves, but from release. Years of frustration, silence, and quiet anger finally coalescing into something solid. Outside the courthouse, a small group of Sunset Valley residents had gathered. Most tried not to make eye contact with me, but a few did. One man, a retired Navy vet I vaguely remembered from Grandma's old neighborhood, came over and nodded. "We believed her," he said quietly. "I'm sorry about that." I just nodded back. Sunset Valley's pristine facade had cracked. People were suddenly realizing how much of their community had been built on silent compliance and blind trust. The next week, the civil court finally ruled on the property issue. The judge declared the original tax lien null and void due to criminal fraud. The auction was invalidated, and legal title to the land reverted to me. Cheryl's purchase was officially erased from the records. But the real punchline? Arizona property law states that improvements made on fraudulently obtained land become the legal possession of the rightful owner. Me again. That meant the 2-story Mediterranean-style home Cheryl built? Mine. The custom in-ground pool? Mine. The designer landscaping, the fence, even the fancy gate plaque with the Dawson family on it? Mine, all mine. When the ruling came down, Martha handed me a copy with a smirk. "Congratulations," she said. "You just inherited a $400,000 guilt offering." She paused. "You want to press for damages?" "Hell yes." We filed for civil compensation, emotional distress, legal fees, and property value disruption. The judge awarded $85,000 in damages. And just like that, Cheryl's empire, built on arrogance, fake smiles, and forged documents, was mine. I stood in front of the iron gate with a pair of bolt cutters in my hands. The same gate that once had a shiny plaque reading "The Dawson family" now bore nothing but screw holes and sun-faded metal. I took one last look at it. This ornamental barrier that had once been a symbol of someone else's power on my land, then snapped the lock like it was nothing. It clicked open with a finality I didn't know I needed. The driveway was smooth, freshly sealed. The landscaping had somehow survived the legal hurricane. Tall palm trees, gravel paths, carefully positioned boulders that screamed affluent suburban design by overpriced consultants. I walked up slowly, alone, key in hand. The house wasn't just mine now. It was rightfully mine. When I opened the door, the chilled air and faint vanilla scent hit me like I'd walked into a catalog shoot. Everything was still staged. She must have furnished it through one of those luxury staging services. The couch was pristine, the bar cart untouched, the kitchen counter lined with decorative lemons in a glass bowl. It was surreal, stepping into a home that had been built to erase me. I walked past the open-concept living room and slid open the glass doors to the backyard. The pool sparkled under the Arizona sun, perfectly clear, perfectly blue. I sat at the edge, fully clothed, kicked off my shoes, and let my feet dangle in. A few hours later, I took a photo. Me, in a lawn chair, laptop on my legs, drink in hand. Behind me, the pool. The house. My house. I posted it with one sentence. "Thanks for the upgrades, Cheryl." It went viral within days. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Local outlets picked it up. One even ran a headline, "HOA Queen loses her castle to the man she tried to erase." Sunset Valley had changed. Slowly, but noticeably. The HOA board was restructured, and the new president, a middle-aged father of 3 named Luis, who introduced himself with a fruit basket, personally apologized for how the neighborhood had treated me. He also let me know that Cheryl had siphoned funds from the HOA's insurance pool, too. They were still tallying up the damage. Some of the neighbors tried to pretend they'd been on my side the whole time. Others avoided eye contact at the community market. One bold woman named Martha, not my Martha, actually came up to me with cookies and said, "Well, I always thought she was a bit too polished." I smiled politely, took the cookies, and tossed them in the trash when she walked away. I wasn't angry anymore, just finished. Kevin pled guilty and took his sentence without appealing. Last I heard, he was in a minimum security facility somewhere in Nevada, likely trying to convince someone he used to be important. As for Cheryl, she filed an appeal. It was denied. From prison, she attempted to sue me for unjust enrichment, claiming I owed her compensation for the house she built. The judge didn't even blink before dismissing it. You cannot profit from improvements made on land you obtained through criminal conduct, the ruling read. This is not enrichment. This is restoration. I printed that quote and framed it above the fireplace. Sometimes, when I work from home now, I sit on the patio with my laptop and look out at the backyard she once guarded like a fortress. It's quiet, peaceful, the kind of peace that doesn't come from silence, but from resolution. I don't know what'll happen 5 years from now. Maybe I'll sell. Maybe I'll stay and build a new chapter here. But one thing's for sure, this land is mine, legally, emotionally, completely. And every time I walk barefoot across the perfectly manicured lawn that she thought would be hers forever, I remember one thing. Greed isn't just a sin. Sometimes it's a gift-wrapped home with a pool.